the distinct honor of introducing our next speaker, and this particular session is entitled LSAMP's Research and Evaluation Framework. And many of our alliances, our original 6, which we call the Grand AMPs, have been in existence for the full 25 years. They have been extraordinarily effective in increasing the numbers of underrepresented students that earn baccalaureate degrees. And so right now, there is a push for them to study all of their effective strategies in terms of a research study. And now this is a great transition into a new agency-wide program called Includes. And our division director and our director of the agency actually will talk about that as well. But let's see, is our speaker here in the room? Yes, okay, awesome. So without further ado, I'm actually going to introduce Dr. Clemencia Cosentino, who actually is an evaluator, and she has been evaluating the LSAMP program for over a decade. She is a senior researcher and STEM area leader at Mathematica Policy Research and the former director of Program for Evaluation and Equity Research at the Urban Institute. In 2005, the Urban Institute did an evaluation of the LSAMP program, and I'm sure many of you have received that particular study. It's where the LSAMP model was created. A recognized leader in the study of factors that influence educational attainment, much of her work centers on large-scale evaluations of efforts to improve the participation of underrepresented groups in education and the scientific workforce. She also has worked on a recent evaluation of Bridge to the Doctorate. How many Bridge to the Doctorate fellows do we have in the audience? Can you please stand? Please stand. Wow. It's an honor. It's such an honor. Just real quick, Bridge to the Doctorate, for those of you who don't know, alliances that have been in existence 10 or more years are eligible to receive additional funding to fund 12 students at one of their institutions for the first 2 years of their graduate studies. And we have had a number of very successful BD fellows actually who have gone on to earn their PhDs, and now they're mentors to the students. So it's a nice full circle. So at a time when the nation focuses on change and innovation, particularly in STEM, Dr. Cosentino's presentation will highlight new evidence from LSAMP on how best to serve and retain underrepresented students in STEM, and on how programs can adapt to respond to new knowledge and changing priorities. So it is with great honor that I bring up Dr. Clemencia Cosentino.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. I am really honored to be here. I have to say that if I had known who was speaking before me, maybe I would not have agreed to speak, because it's kind of hard to follow that, especially with research. But it really is humbling to hear about the experiences of others and the ways in which programs like LSAMP can touch their lives. And I'm really honored to have been a part of it, and to continue in small ways to be a part of it through my work. I also want to thank Dr. Innes and Dr. Hicks for thinking of me, for inviting me to share what I have learned over the past decade or so of following this program, and Dr. McHenry for finding a spot in the agenda. I want to begin, and as I said before, I'm just going to try not to bore you to death, but I am going to present some research findings, but I hope to do it at a really high level to show the ways in which the program has evolved with time. It started in 1991, and it is not today the same program that it was in 1991. It has changed in response to policy priorities, and it has changed in response to evidence, research evidence, that has been used as envisioned to help improve the program. And so I'm going to begin, though, by taking a moment to highlight that here in town, the 11th of February at the Washington Press Club, we had a group of scientists gathered along with NSF to announce that they had succeeded in detecting gravitational waves from the collision of two black holes that I downloaded this handy picture from the internet. It is incredibly exciting for science. It's moments like this that get the general public excited as well. And if you think about it, it's about what we continue to discover, and it's about how we find evidence for theories that guide our work for a very long time. Einstein, I think, would be delighted today to find that we have actual evidence of his theory of relativity. But it's not just Einstein, it's not just the scientists that worked on this project that ought to be congratulated. I think we need to celebrate also the leadership of NSF. NSF was behind that project as they are behind many other projects in science. Science today couldn't happen in the US the way it does without the leadership of the National Science Foundation. They invested more than $1 billion in this project, and more than 1,000 scientists, 1,004 scientists are named on the paper. It's very much a team effort, and a team that needs to be committed, it needs to grow, and it needs to diversify. And that's where NSF makes its additional contribution. Not only do they support science, they support the training of scientists. And I think that's something that we need to remember. It's part of their job. It's part of the guidance that they have received from Congress through legislation. It's a mandate that they have, and it's a mandate to not only grow, but to diversify the workforce, to include women. They've got a statute from 1980, including women and minorities. It has been expanded to include veterans and other protected groups. And it's this leadership that led to the creation of the LSAMP program in 1991. I'm not going to go over the history of LSAMP, because there are people in this room that know it better than I do, and I'm sure Dr. Hicks will be talking about it. But I do want to talk about how it has evolved over time to help NSF fulfill its mandate, to grow and to diversify the workforce. And I would also argue to fulfill its mandate to improve our knowledge, not just our scientific knowledge, but our knowledge of what works to train, to develop the scientific workforce. So what is the goal of LSAMP? It's to do just that. It's to help train scientists by focusing on minorities, by focusing on students that are underrepresented in STEM, to help grow that workforce and to help diversify it. I think these are two both independent and related goals, because you could grow the workforce with other strategies. But we value not just growth, but also diversity. LSAMP is unique in that it is congressionally mandated. It was Congress that told the National Science Foundation, not only do you have to grow and diversify the workforce, but you really have to do it now, and you have to create a program to demonstrate that you're doing it. So we did the evaluation of LSAMP when we were at the Urban Institute. It looked at cohorts that had participated in the program in the 90s. And what NSF wanted to know was whether it worked. Did it grow and diversify the workforce? And LSAMP didn't just want to graduate students. They wanted them to go on to graduate school as a signal that they were becoming, they were going to stay in the scientific workforce. So that was really important, that second step. So when we did the evaluation of LSAMP, we found this. Many of you have already seen these results. 80% of LSAMP participants continue on to take courses. 66% of them enroll in a graduate program, and 45% of them actually graduate. And this graph shows the difference with the two comparison groups that we used, other underrepresented minorities and then whites and Asians. And you can see the differences. They're huge. They're so big that, in fact, at first we didn't believe them. We were worried to release a report and then to have someone show that we had somehow done something wrong, because it's just hard to believe that a program can have this much of an impact. So at the time, we decided to be extra cautious, and in addition to having peer review of our work, we decided to have peer analysis of our work. We hired the same firm that had helped us in Texas to do the data collection to track graduates of LSAMP all over the country. We hired them to reproduce our analysis. We didn't give them our code, but they had the data. We give them the national data they needed, and we said, can you reproduce this work? What results do you get? And they did, and they matched them to the second decimal point. Not every finding passed the second decimal point, but we felt reassured that that was good enough, and we released it. So what explains that success? What explains those differences? We were scratching our heads trying to understand what made LSAMP different from other programs that we knew. And we drew on the literature to understand that. When we looked at the literature, we discovered that what LSAMP institutions were doing amounted to a set of activities that constituted these elements, which are activities to encourage academic integration of students into an institution, activities to encourage social integration into their environment, their institution, and activities to help induct students into their professions. So some of these activities, for example, getting an internship that enables one to participate in the program. It may be getting tutoring. Social integration activities might be, for example, requiring that students work in peer study groups. And that way they not only help each other, but they form a community. And the professionalization activities included things like attending conferences with faculty or working closely with faculty or encouraging them to publish papers. So what we found is that these activities together encourage social and academic integration that is associated with higher retention. And it is the professionalization activities that encourage continuation into graduate studies. And some of them even included coaching to go on to graduate school. When we wanted to test the model, we wanted to test those three buckets. What is the relative value of social integration versus academic integration versus professionalization, to be able to say, oh, you get 20% higher results if you add this bucket versus that bucket. We couldn't do that, because if you think about it, one activity could serve more than one goal. Working with a faculty member could be all three. It could help with academic integration, with social integration, and with professionalization. We couldn't tease them apart. What we could do was look at those specific activities and measure their association with the outcomes we were interested in, things like going on to graduate school and graduating. And I want to highlight here from all of our findings, these findings that you see on the board, because there are two of the three program components that we could definitely see a strong association with going on to graduate school and graduating. Two of them are related to research. It's doing internships, many of which were research internships, working with a faculty member on their research project. This is very important because it is a really critical aspect of the scientific enterprise. And these were activities that, even though we consider the LSAMP model an integrated model, it's the bundle of activities that matter, that students get access to all of them, not to just one or two. We then saw, and this is where I was talking about where I wanted to go slightly higher level than walk you through all of our findings, is that NSF then expanded to include additional opportunities for research for LSAMP graduates. There are partnerships, for example, with the Department of Energy for students to do internships, research internships in the summer, and for faculty as well. There's the NAPIRA program for Native Americans and Pacific Islanders that has now been extended to African Americans and Hispanics who are in biology and ecology, and they can go to Costa Rica to a field station to do research. So these are, in addition to what is offered through LSAMP, these are supplementary activities for program participants, which deepens the research aspects of the LSAMP program. When we looked at the LSAMP findings and our analysis, we found that the students that started at a community college were just as likely to have the same outcomes as the students that started at a four-year college. They were as likely to succeed, to go on to take their courses, to enroll in a program, and to graduate. So one of our recommendations was that the community college aspects of LSAMP be strengthened. Now, we didn't recommend how, Community colleges already participate in the alliances that comprise the LSAMP program, but this component was integrated through B2B. In addition to adding research opportunities, the LSAMP program now includes Bridge to the Baccalaureate. Now, there was a big time lag. I can't really say that there's a cause and effect, that it was necessarily our research findings that led to this addition, but I can certainly say that it's in line with what we found and made a lot of sense to me when I heard that that was happening. So I told you that 45% of former LSAMP graduates got graduate degrees. That's an amazing statistic. But what happened to the rest? What happened to the ones that didn't? So we asked them, and it turned out that they were a lot more likely than the comparison students in the national sample that we had to cite some kind of financial reason. And I put some examples here to say, well, I need to work, or I have family responsibilities. So clearly, I'm sure that many of you are going to say, well, duh, I could have told you that. You don't need a big research project to know that they don't have money to pay for graduate school. But it's good to have the evidence, because it is the evidence that can be used to spur change. And the program did change. It added BD, the box on the right. It added the BD program. The Bridge to the Doctorate program is a program to address just that. And that, I know that definitely there was a connection because we had conversations about it. If there's all these students that are supported through LSAMP at the undergraduate level and that then face financial barriers to going on to graduate school, we're potentially losing from the pipeline a lot of students that could have gone on. And so BD was designed to do just that, to offer the first 2 years of graduate studies for students that had participated in LSAMP and needed funding. Now, when the program was set up, the idea was Bridge to the Doctorate. It was to get PhDs, to get minority PhDs. The question then arose of, well, what about getting a master's degree? Well, the idea was the PhD, not the master's. But NSF allowed a master's with the understanding that the expectation would be a PhD. What this meant is that it opened the door for master's degree granting institutions to participate in the program. And that was actually not an obvious decision. And in fact, at the time that we designed the study, I had some of you come up to me and say, well, BD really ought to be for PhD granting institutions because we want to produce PhDs. And we didn't know. We didn't know if that was, in terms of a strategy, the best way to go, if that was the goal. But the decision was made by NSF that they would support master's degree and that they would support them at master's degree granting institutions. So from all of our results, I just want to highlight those because I want to show the evidence, which is actually, I think, quite compelling. Look at this graph. These are the master's students. They outperform a matched comparison. So this was a very tight comparison group of similar students at similar institutions getting similar degrees in the same years. And the former LSM students are more likely to complete the master's degree, are more likely to enroll in a PhD, are more likely to enter the PhD track, and are more likely to get that PhD. To me, this was incredible because it had very tangible policy implications. It had very tangible programmatic implications. It said loud and clear to me that, yes, this is another way not only to grow, not only to diversify the workforce, but truly to grow it. And the reason I say that is the logic of DD was to look for those students who wanted a PhD, just didn't have the money. What these institutions told us they were doing was looking for those supporting the master's students that some of them didn't even know what a PhD was, and some of them didn't want a PhD. They thought they only wanted a master's, and encouraging them and supporting them to continue. So to me, what this tells me is this is truly growing the pipeline because these are students that might not have gone on to, and certainly they were much less likely to have gone on to get a PhD. LSAMP didn't stop there in its evolution. So I talked to you about how LSAMP was an undergraduate program, then it expanded research opportunities, then it expanded to BD, and it expanded to the two-year colleges. To scale up its impact, we all know no program can just continue to grow. and just give more grants. The program does not have the money to do that. And it's also not realistic, because that would be a pretty limited strategy. It makes sense to maintain a core, but it also makes sense to try to scale up through other means. And this is one mean. It's scaling up through dissemination. By creating a center that can disseminate effective practices, that can do outreach to non-LSAMP institutions. Because we need to remember most minority students are enrolled in predominantly white institutions. And so it would be great to spread this around the country to other institutions that may not be part of the LSAMP program. And it also does provide a supplement in that it does disseminate additional opportunities that are similar to the ones that are being offered now. So this is the same logic as we saw before with additional supplemental research opportunities. There are supplemental opportunities through this center. So what I want to stress here is that I want to go back to my earlier remarks. I think the LSAMP program has definitely changed. It has changed over time, I'm sure, because of changing priorities at NSF, changing priorities through different administrations, but it has also changed in profound ways because of evidence, because of the research evidence that has been made available through these evaluations. And I recall having a conversation with Dr. Hicks as we were designing the BD evaluation. He was very excited about it. He just thought BD was going to have these amazing findings like we had had for the prior LSAMP study. And I started worrying, because I'm a researcher. I said, you know, it might not look so good. I don't know until we do the research. So I wanted to manage expectations, and he said, oh, but that's okay. I hope Dr. Hicks doesn't mind that I say this. He said, I don't mind if it's bad news. I just need the news so that I can fix it. And to me, that idea is just sort of evidence to me that validates the work that we do. We do this work, this evaluation work, in order to inform those that are making decisions, those that are running programs or that are making policies. And the idea that evidence-based decision-making is actually happening is not only rewarding, but it is a way where we see we are contributing, the NSF is contributing, and you are contributing in different ways to growing and diversifying this workforce. So I'm going to end with that and give a round of applause to the LSAMP masterminds at the National Science Foundation. Thank you very much.